want to thank Mr. John Hofmeister today for joining us on Oil and Gas 360's Top Minds in the Business series. Bloomberg has a front-page story today that the headline says, quote, Saudi Arabia wooing fired U.S. shale workers to, quote, join our team, unquote. It talks about Saudi Aramco's strong U.S. recruiting effort to recruit laid-off oil and gas people to come to Saudi Arabia and work on developing their unconventional resources. So, the lead sentence sets it up like this. Workers fired from U.S. shale fields after the collapse in oil prices could soon have a new boss, the nation some blame for driving that decline. What is your thought about that?
Well, Saudi Aramco has been recruiting Western-educated technical experts, technical staff, really from the very beginning. If we go back to the days when it was Aramco, before it was Saudi Aramco, many of the technical people who worked in Saudi Arabia were from Western backgrounds, Western schools, and had the knowledge and skills necessary for Aramco's development. Then when Aramco was nationalized by Saudi Arabia, many of those staff stayed on. And for the entire period from literally the 60s when it was nationalized through till today, Saudi Aramco has had active recruiters in Europe and in Canada and the U.S. and other parts of the world to try to get the best talent they can find. And at the present time, of course, there are surplus people in North America because of the lower oil price. And no question, it's a recruiting opportunity for a company like Saudi Aramco. So I'm not surprised. I was interviewed for that article and commented that it's been a historic practice and is likely to continue while Saudi Arabia also develops its indigenous capability in developing its own oil and gas talent nationally. But I'm not surprised at this, and I'm not surprised that global recruiting is ongoing among some companies that are not facing some of the crisis that is being faced right now, let's say, in the North American oil shale patch. Because there is still recruiting going on, and Saudi Arabia being one of those companies that's still recruiting. It's trying to build its talent base. It needs to. With regard to whether Saudi Arabia caused or is a principal reason why we have this collapse in oil prices, I would say that that's an unfair criticism in the sense that Saudi Arabia, as an independent oil producer, nationally owned oil company, is not required to cut its production by anybody except itself if it chooses to. It's its choice. Just like ExxonMobil or Shell or Chevron or anybody else chooses a certain path, so too does Saudi Aramco in this current period. The real problem with the oil volatility right now is not expensive shale. The real problem is shortage of demand. So China's slowed down, India's slowed down, Brazil, Russia, all probably in recession, both of them. Europe's been in chronic recession for the last 5-6 years. And so it's the lack of global growth in oil demand that has caused the kind of current surplus that we have, not the fact that we have, expensive shale operations. Frankly, they're not that expensive relative to, a resumption of global demand for oil, because we'll see the price go back up. And we'll resume shale operations, I think, when this cycle has passed, as and when we achieve equilibrium in the supply-demand relationship.
Thinking about OPEC for a second, would you say the rest of the OPEC members, is OPEC itself still of a major consequence, or is it, as some analysts have started to say, is it a thing of the past?
In my opinion, OPEC as an institution has outlived its usefulness. There was a time in a colonial period and a post-colonial period where developing countries who had oil production to produce were tired of being so-called exploited by primarily Western oil companies, and they rallied in their own defense. And there was a period of learning that took place in the global world of oil producers about the role of national oil companies, independent oil companies, and there were pretty strongly held views, and I think with a lot of data to support it, that independent oil companies had for a long period of time exploited national oil companies to the advantage of the international oil companies or independent oil companies. There was a corrective period, 70s, 80s, even into the 90s. But I would say that in today's world, if national oil companies can't compete after decades and decades of the opportunity to develop their own capabilities, then the need for a cartel, because these people have not learned how to compete, is really relying on an artifice that should not exist. It's illegal under U.S. law to operate in cartel fashion. We all know that. It should be, but there is no adjudicating body in the world that could attack an international cartel. But I think the market forces of today have basically put the OPEC cartel into an institution of the past. It's time for them to really recognize that certain countries, such as Venezuela, such as Nigeria, such as Iraq, such as Syria, these are countries that have just relied upon the cartel to basically take care of themselves and pay their bills without taking care of the need to govern themselves, without having an idea or any accountability for good business practices, development of talent, management of costs. And so, Venezuela is probably officially bankrupt if it followed any norms in accounting rules. And Nigeria not too far away from that. Also, the level of corruption that's tolerated in certain OPEC countries is significant and has a negative effect on business. The consequence of all of this is Saudi Arabia has basically said, enough. Why should we subsidize the likes of Venezuela, Nigeria, Iraq, so that they can pay their bills with high oil prices when they're irresponsible in the manner in which they account for their bills? And so I would just say that if Venezuela goes belly up, or Petrobras or Petronas or any other national oil company has trouble in the future, it's their own fault because they've had decades to develop and mature. And so the fact that PDVSA is badly run and is run largely for political purposes, that's the Venezuelan National Oil Company,
right.
They have a real problem. They have to fix themselves. Nobody else is going to do it for them, including Saudi Arabia. They're past that point. So, in essence, the answer to your question is OPEC's outlived its usefulness.
Well, thank you so much for spending your time with us and sharing some of your insight. We really appreciate it, John.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.